Audio unleashed. Hey, right off the bat, we should tell people that we did our AMA video, or AUA, Ask Us Any. We did a video where we answered a bunch of our patrons' questions, and we posted it on YouTube page. So if you only listen to us on, Apple Podcasts or Spotify or something like that, head on over to our YouTube page. It's a big old video. Sorry about that. We didn't realize how long it was going to take us to answer that many questions.
Yeah.
We had questions from Dr. Floyd Toole. We had questions from Dr. Sean Olive. We had questions from Daryl Wilkinson and Lauren Dragon and Jeffrey Morrison and Aaron Hardison. And we dug through them all and gave our perspectives. And I kind of like the way it turned out, to be honest. I'm shocked about that.
Yeah, me too. I normally hate watching myself on YouTube. And I normally refuse even, because I'm on these things a lot, and I normally just refuse even to look at the final product. But in this case, I did, because you sort of begged me, and I did. I was like, this is actually good, and it's like 2 hours. But I think for the holidays, that's good because sometimes in the holidays you kind of have some time to kill. So
yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Watch the Grateful Dead Yule log for the next 2 weeks? No, come on, you got to break it up.
Yule log?
Yeah, of course there's a Grateful Dead Yule log on their YouTube channel. So they do like a Yule log video thing, and it's just they just do live shows. There's been a lot of 77 in rotation, 1977. But it's a great way to just put it on and watch a fire burn and listen to some great Live Dead, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the thing you could do during the holidays.
It is. Hey, you sound a little funny this week. What's going on, man?
Well, I flew down to Houston to be with my family for Christmas, and I was already getting a little croaky, and the change in climate, going from normal humidity to swamp humidity, has thrown off my voice. And plus, I'm on a pair of Earfun Air Pro 4 something. God, I hate the names of these things. And so I'm coming to you from, live through my Android phone with earbuds instead of through my normal mic and things like that. So
I think that's a little more consequential than the climate adjustment. So, but anyway, we got some cool stuff to talk about this week.
The climate feels very substantial, I got to tell you. I feel like I'm 30 pounds heavier here.
Yeah.
You're breathing
You're not used to all the humidity.
Air. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyway, man, we got some cool stuff to talk about this week, including a controversial one to start with. So this is going to be, look, I'm not going to be able to introduce the whole thing in the introduction because it's just too much. So let me give the TLDR. There's a company called Tom Evans Audio who makes this $17,000 25,000 pound phono preamp, whatever. And there's a YouTube channel called Mend It Mark. And so the customer had sent their preamp into Tom Evans for repair. They were like, this is going to be $6,000. So he was like, no, send it to Mend It Mark. And Mend It Mark did a video, and it turns out it was just like a shorted cap. That's all. But he did a video about the construction of this this piece of gear, and was like, there's some problems. Like, this is very poorly designed, very cheaply made. And Tom Evans, the company, Tom Evans Audio, basically, to go to war with him, did a copyright strike and got YouTube to take the video down.
Because he showed pictures of the product that they had provided or something?
Well, I think the biggest problem was that he drew his own schematic of the circuits, right? And to explain what was going on. And they were like, that is trademarked. You can't go show our schematics. So they did a copyright strike. And now YouTube is like, I don't know, you take it up with them. If you can hire a lawyer or something like that. Yeah. But another YouTuber, another popular repair YouTuber by the name of Louis Rossman, he did a deconstruction, and he's actually reposting the video on his channel and challenging Tom Evans to do the same copyright strike on him. There's a lot to dig into here. We'll get to it, but that's kind of the overview. What do you want to talk about this week?
I'm so fascinated by this Tom Evans thing. I was like reading his website, so you caught me off guard. It's better than I expected.
Sorry.
Well, I should say it's worse than I expected, but it's more entertaining than I expected. Yeah. We're going to talk about why vintage audio, according to the BBC, that would be the British Broadcasting Corporation, why is vintage audio equipment booming? They have a really nice article in here on this. And it's a little light on data, but it is, it's got some data, but it's talking about how people are kind of going back to vintage audio gear, partly because, it's reliable and it can be repaired as well, which a lot of newer audio gear cannot be repaired. Or it's difficult to. And certainly the real high-tech stuff, like your phones and your Bluetooth speakers and stuff like that, well, forget it. And so... but it really is a kind of good, I thought it would kind of kick us off on a discussion of like, where do we stand with all that stuff? And is there really any future for us besides just these products that can't be really taken apart without destroying them? And, products that might actually last, that we might have for more than 3 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but we'll talk. We'll discuss. We'll come to some conclusions, I'm sure.
Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. After that, I want to dig into this Darko video that you sent me, a video by John Darko called Amplifier Matching with the Q Concerto Meta. So Darko has been talking about the speaker a lot lately. A lot of people have been talking about the speaker a lot lately, but this is not a review of that speaker specifically. This is someone else reached out to him and said, "Hey, I think I got a slightly different take on that speaker than you do. You should try it with a different amp." And so Darko in this video plugs a bunch of different amps into the speaker and sort of tells you what he thinks about the sound of them and how they sound differently and how, well, his premise here is that you can't ever really know what a speaker sounds like if it sounds different with every amp. There's a lot to chew on here. I'm not going to give any of my thoughts away. If you want to give a little tease of your thinking on this, but I'm going to save mine for the actual segment.
I will just say I love this video. It raised a lot of questions with me, and it's just. I mean, there's a lot of basic issues here that we should talk about because they don't get talked about enough. I think people don't understand things like amplifier power ratings as well as they should, and that goes for reviewers as well as average audiophiles and sometimes even manufacturers. But we're going to have a nice rambling discussion. I think that might be the longest discussion of this episode. Because I can definitely, I can ramble about amplifiers for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, you can.
And so for our Patreon subscribers, patrons, we are going to get a little more technical, and we are going to talk about a Reddit thing that you forwarded to me, which I looked at, and I was kind of aware of this already because this has been a thing that's been happening, is updated AirPods Max tuning as measured on SoundGuy's B&K 5128. And what this is talking about is, there's been a big change in headphone. There's not been a big change in headphone measurement. There's been a significant, but kind of somewhat subtle change in headphone measurement, where a lot of people have gone to, high resolution, quote unquote, high resolution ear stimulators that go up to 20 kilohertz, whereas the old ones only really were reliably measured up to about 8 kilohertz. And they also have anthropomorphic ears that work differently than the old, really kind of crappy, non-realistic ears that they had in those things before. For some reason, I don't know why. But anyway, it's kind of changed the way headphones are measuring, but also in even more pertinent to this is that Apple apparently changed the tuning of this product.
Yeah.
And without announcing it. And we're going to talk about what that means to manufacturers, what it means to reviewers, what it means to consumers, what it means to everybody. And when we have a world where, with a lot of these audio products you buy now that are internet connected and can be updated and all that, we can't say for sure what they sound like anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's going to be interesting. That discussion is going to make me glad I'm about to retire.
Oh man, I hope I'm not the one pushing you over the edge here. I'm just happy that I got you to go to Reddit, man. I'm just so proud of that. Like, I don't know if I've got this stealth mission to get you to use Reddit or what, but I'm just so proud of you for doing it.
Don't get too proud. I didn't install the app. I refuse.
You don't need to install the app.
Install the app. Install the app. I'm not installing that stupid app.
Yeah. Anyway. Speaking of stupid, let's talk about Tom Evans audio. So, let's give people a little bit of context of what this product actually is. So this is something called the Tom Evans Master Groove SR Mark III. Mm-hmm. It is a $25,000 phono stage, like I said. And if you go to their website, they are very proud of the fact that they only make 10 of these each year. Such is the overwhelming complexity and workload of hand measuring and perfectly matching every component of this ultimate phono stage. So anyway, long story short, as I understand it, there's a lot of drama here, so I might be missing some of the details, but the customer had one of these and it stopped working. So he sent it back to Tom Evans Audio for repair, and they quoted him $6,000 repair cost. And he was like, nay. So he had them ship it to a popular YouTube repair guy named Mendit Mark, who does videos about repairing old equipment. And Mendit Mark was not impressed. Further, big thing is just the build quality of this thing is really, really suspect. I mean, you take it out of the chassis and it looks like somebody put together Tinker Toys. There's no way this thing should ever be shipped anywhere. Like, this is not built to survive shipping at all.
And further, what specifically? Let's say what that was.
It was the what do you call them? The sort of the
standoffs.
The standoffs.
Yeah, they're called standoffs.
Okay.
They're plastic standoffs, and I mean, I guess I've used these a lot in things I've built, and plastic kind of works, but he's got like double decker plastic standoffs, and they're about like 2 inches high, it looks like, and then he's got boards double decked with that. So there's like a standoff, a board, a standoff, a board, like a multi-story building in there. And
right.
It is, it's a little, So in other words, if this thing gets banged around a little bit in shipping, these boards are going to move around, and there is a chance, I'd say a stronger chance than none, that you might have a malfunction because internally the thing falls apart. Now, I don't have any evidence that it does, but it's a little cheesy. And I've seen a lot of products, and I don't think I've never seen anybody stack. I've seen people stack boards, but never 2 inches apart or whatever that is. And I've seen people stack boards and they were maybe, 3/4 of an inch apart at most, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah. I don't know of a bunch of problems with products like that, but what else was wrong with it?
Well, the biggest thing was they quoted him, again, it was like something like 6,000 pounds for the repair. And what Mendit Mark found out was that it was a single shorted cap. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all that was needed to repair this thing. And during the process of his sort of evaluation of the product and his video about it, he drew a schematic of the circuitry. And that is the thing. Tom Evans Audio. By the way, I just Squirrel. Let's go on an aside a minute because I have to read this paragraph because this. Okay. We need this guy doing marketing for Audio Unleashed because he knows how to sell a product. Whoever wrote wrote this. Here it says, if the future of audio is to be defined by one component, then we believe the Tom Evans audio design Master Groove SR Mark III will be that component. And given all that you already know about our world-beating range of phono stages, do you truly believe that such an advancement would come from anyone else? Like, wow. What on earth do they think a phono stage does, man?
That starts to make me understand why this guy sued the other guy, Mark, because
he didn't sue.
He didn't sue, and he just had YouTube. Why he can't take criticism, because he's got he seems to have an extremely inflated opinion of himself. Did you go to the website?
Yeah. That's where I saw the paragraph I just read, man. I mean, it's amazing.
It's like right up front. It says, all audio amplifiers, be they IC or discrete circuits, have inherent flaws that the ear/brain is very sensitive to. Now, these flaws are not explained.
No, of course not.
They have flaws, all right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you imagine like an Olympic gymnastics judge? Like, Olympian does their routine, and the judge is like, nah, it has flaws. And the gymnast is like, well, what? It just has flaws. And then I have developed unique circuitry and techniques to avoid the common pitfalls of amplifier design others fall into. I have to say, this may sound a little crude, but I think that, what's this thing called? The Master Groove?
Yeah, Master Groove SR Mark III. It should be called
Master, but Master something else.
Oh, is there a Tory at the end of that? Anyway,
this is just so stupid.
And so I'm basically what they got mad and claimed that the diagram that Mark drew himself was a violation of their trademark or copyright or whatever, and they flagged him on YouTube, and YouTube took the video down. So then another YouTuber, popular repair YouTuber, Louis Rossmann, took up the cause, is reposting the video, but has now done 2 videos explaining what is wrong with this, why he's challenging Tom Evans audio, and really honestly sort of the way that YouTube works. I've got a little bit of experience with this myself. Like, for a while back, way back, I did a YouTube video channel about CPAP, right? Because there were some, it was right about the time I went on CPAP, it was revealed that one of the CPAP manufacturers, who's very Sue happy, by the way, so I'm going to be a little vague here, basically knew that they were using carcinogenic foam in their CPAPs. They knew that. There's no way they didn't know that, and they were burying the info, and they got caught, and they had to do a massive recall. And I did a video about that. They did a copyright strike on my video, and as best I can tell, what they managed to copyright was I used a photo of their CPAP in the preview image of my video, right? And they were like, oh, nope, copyright strike. And so what's weird is YouTube didn't take the video down. What they did was just demonetized it for life. They demonetized it for me, not for the company. So any money, any ad revenue that video makes now goes to that company that made that CPAP that I was doing the video about, because they did the copyright strike. YouTube doesn't care. If there is a fight between a corporation and a little guy, YouTube is, well, obviously the corporation's right. You got a problem with that, sue them. I don't know. It's not our problem. They said you did copyright. You did copyright, so we're taking it down. But Louis Rossmann is going to war, and apparently he's like, come on, copyright strike me. Let's do it, because I will hire a lawyer. So I think that's interesting. But the bigger problem is just like, is this the world we're living in now? Is this the world we're living in where manufacturers don't like something that somebody says, and so they just go straight for the cheapest way to hurt that journalist or YouTuber or whatever it is? I mean, it's so sad. And the thing is, I'd never heard of Tom Evans audio in my life. And I would imagine most people who have now watched these videos had never heard of them. I would imagine most of our podcast audience has never heard of them. Now we've all heard of them. They Streisand Effected themselves really, really hard. And now everybody who knows about Tom Evans, who didn't before, knows them for really scummy behavior. Yeah. So
Yeah. Wasn't there another company this just like a year ago that we talked about? Where a lot of people didn't know who they are, but then now they have a reputation for being jerks. Oh, it was the guy in Utah. What's that guy who makes the speakers?
Tecton.
Eric
Alexander. Yeah. Yep. Good point. Although I would say they had a little more visibility than Tom Evans Audio did.
Oh God, much more. No, they were they are a very well-known brand.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking at this. I can only find one review of it, or is it two reviews? And the review is glowing. It's just from it looks like it's from someone just posting on the What Hi-Fi website. But that's all I can find. And the guy is just slobbering. It's like a 12-year-old review, but the guy's just like slobbering all over it. Product looks very similar.
There's one bright spot in this, though. I guess if I'm trying to be an optimist here and look on the bright side, it's the fact that Tom Evans Audio, before all of this blew up, at least only suspected that there were 10 people in the world stupid enough to buy one of these a year. So there's no reason that they could only make 10, man. I could build 10 of these in a month in my backyard, right? They could make 10 of these a day if they wanted to, but they're claiming 10 a year. They just think there are only 10 suckers out there a year.
So I gotta say that's funny, but this says something to me about the state of audio right now. And it used to be, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, this guy could have made these things and no one would have ever known the difference, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole high-end audio industry is built around publications like The Absolute Sound that had people that really didn't know a whole lot about audio. And in my view, didn't know a lot about music either. Otherwise, they realized that all these little tiny things they were complaining about, are irrelevant to the music. It's just irrelevant to their consumerism and their ego, right? And, if Harry Pearson was complaining that something had slightly less microdynamics than another thing, that doesn't indicate that Harry Pearson understood music. It indicates that he didn't understand music.
Yeah.
He was allowing it to become this consumerist pursuit rather than, like having the hottest car or whatever, right?
Right.
Rather than actually appreciating the music. And I think that kind of approach, a lot of these publications that have specialized in that and just basically just giving gushing reviews to some of this high-end stuff. And then therefore these high-end manufacturers can get away with all this just completely specious marketing language and these, really super high priced stuff that is it's Veblen goods. It's the value in it is the high price, right? And so they build, and I will say that, I think with most of these manufacturers, at least the ones I've encountered, it's not like they're charging ridiculous amounts, but, their percentage of build cost versus list price is typically, comparable to that of, more people like NAD or somebody, right? More mainstream manufacturer. But like with this,
I don't know if I believe that's the case with this one, though.
I mean, the thing is, with this one, I can't say, but certainly with some of the manufacturers I've worked with, I will say, I knew they told me what their manufacturing costs were. And I visited their factories and I could see what everything was. And I knew what their metal cost was. And the metal cost is a big chunk of this stuff. So I could see how much money they were making. And they were making X percentage, but it was comparable to what a normal sort of, lower end mainstream audio manufacturer would make. And it's more than like probably a Sony would make, right? Or an LG or a Samsung, because they work on smaller margins, but, they turn over their product line every year, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that a lot of the high-end audio manufacturers have kind of trusted that like they could bamboozle these reviewers into just giving glowing reviews of products that, sound comes out. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's what a miracle, it actually plays music.
Yeah.
And, they could trust these reviewers. They could bamboozle. They could take them to nice dinners at trade shows and things like that. They could come out to their houses and install the gear and kind of blow smoke up the reviewers' butts and, make them feel like they were, refined men of culture and all that. And they could count on getting glowing reviews of a freaking amplifier. It's an amplifier,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's differences, but it's an amplifier. It makes the signal bigger than it was before. It's not art. Okay.
Yeah.
Amplifier manufacturers are not artists. This guy, Tom Evans, clearly thinks he is some kind of an artist. It would appear. And he is not. He's just some guy who put together a phono preamp that works, at least for a while.
Yeah. And it's not even a pretty, I would expect for, 25,000 pounds or whatever for this to be like a nice looking piece of audio jewelry. It's not. Honestly, like the WEM amp looks to be a much more luxurious, better designed, higher quality component. Seriously, you look at stuff like the Krell stuff and the D'Agostino stuff, and you're like, there is money there, even if I don't think that money is going towards performance, right? With this, it's just like, that looks like it should sell for like $90. Well, honestly.
It looks like if I was going to start a high-end audio company and I couldn't afford to go to Alex Rasmussen or somebody like that and have a extraordinarily cool chassis designed and built, which I couldn't because that would be extremely expensive. Although people do it, but I would go find somebody who makes generic chassis that look cool. And that's what this Tom Evans thing looks like. It looks like some kind of relatively generic chassis he bought. It's cool. It's a cool chassis. But I've seen similar chassis designs before. If this is proprietary, it's not real proprietary.
No.
And it's some metal posts, some metal tubes.
Yeah.
On the outside with, metal sheets on the inside. And I guess the tubes are slotted to fit the sheets. And, it looks honestly like something I could have probably put together myself. Yeah. Not that I'm pretty good with tools, but anyway.
Here's a bit of advice for high-end audio manufacturers who are, I don't know, maybe emboldened by this and think, hey, that's a good way to take down negative press. Go Google the Streisand Effect, right? Because it just keeps happening again and again. I don't know if people know that. So the Streisand Effect is, at some point, somewhere, somebody was taking a photo of the coastline, California coastline, and they just happened to get a photo of Barbra Streisand's house in it, right? And she went crazy and filed a lawsuit. You got to take that down, blah, blah, blah. And it's all of a sudden people went, wait, that's Barbra Streisand's house? Like they only found out it was Barbra Streisand's house because she sued to get the photo removed from Google Images.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. You can create bad press for yourself really quick. It does.
Because, I used to work in Malibu, and like everybody knew where Cher's house was. It's right there off the highway. And,
right, yeah.
It's kind of like no big deal. It's like, but she made a big deal out of it, and she just looked petty and stupid.
Yeah. So. And nobody was saying, this is Barbra Streisand's house. Look at Barbra Streisand's house in this photo. It was just a photo of the coastline. She was the one that pointed out it was hers. So, yeah. Anyway, that's your lesson for the day, the Streisand Effect.
Well, good. We have helped out the high-end audio industry.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, I need to go get a lozenge real quick. You want to take a break and get some water? And
sure. I got a doggy barking anyway.
All right, man. We'll be right back, y'all.
All right. And we are back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are going to talk about a story that you, Dennis Berger, turned me on to. Although I think I'd seen it. I'm pretty sure I'd seen it before. It's titled, Why is Vintage Audio Equipment Booming? And it appeared on the BBC News website. And it's talking about the feature of this article is a guy in Manchester who sells only music on cassette tapes. And he also sells his own, store branded cassette players.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into, it uses that as a starting point, but then it talks about how people are buying and fixing old music equipment rather than buying new music equipment. Supposedly, Google searches for CD player repair near me increased by 23% between 20 and 2024. And Google searches for audio equipment repair near me grew by 91%.
Wow.
That's kind of a big deal. And then Statista says that the electronics repair service market is expected to double in size from 122 billion in 2021 to 240 billion in 2033. I don't know if that's adjusted for inflation, but
I don't either.
That's a substantial gain. And I think that kind of indicates that, at least on some level, at least with some small part of the population, there is a real interest in not purchasing this sort of throwaway audio equipment that is now manufactured. And by throwaway audio equipment, I mean any kind of active headphones or earphones, any Bluetooth, basically headphones or earphones. Any, almost none of which have batteries that can be replaced. Or can even be fixed. You can't really even take them apart.
Right.
Not and get them back together again. And I would say I would say Bluetooth speakers. A couple are starting to come out with replaceable batteries. JBL has done that recently in some of the larger models. But almost none of them have replaceable batteries, and almost none of them are designed to be disassembled and reassembled. And then I would also say sound bars, because those are really hard to get into, and they're really. I've tried a couple times. I
remember Dan Loftman telling me that he and Lonnie at Emotiva were at one point flirting with the idea of maybe making an active soundbar. And so they bought a few of the most popular models and started taking them apart and realized there's no way we're ever getting this back together. Plus there's like 250 screws. Like, what is going on here? And he was like, basically it's like they are designed to be put together with very cheap labor. They are not designed to be repaired. He was like, that is just not the kind of component we want to make. So we decided, never mind.
Yeah. And not to mention that sound bars, they have to be continually updated with new technologies to sell. And, meaning the latest version of HDMI, meaning, ultimately they're going to be expected to have Auracast Bluetooth probably. Which very few things have now, but probably eventually all Bluetooth stuff will go that way. Some of them have Wi-Fi, and they've put that in and taken it out, and we saw a lot of it going in. And I think we're just my last round of sound buys I tested for Wirecutter was a little slim on the Wi-Fi, which I was happy about. And
interesting,
because I don't think soundbars should have Wi-Fi. It just adds to the complexity, and you're using the thing to watch movies. And if you want to have it as part of your Sonos system, then whatever, I guess. But I just don't. Does every speaker in your house have to play, whatever?
Well,
Dean
I
Martin
guess not.
singing
But...
Merry Christmas or something? No, he's saying. I can't remember which Christmas song he's saying. One of them,
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot, the majority of, and of course, we have phones that are tough to repair at best.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just this colossal amount of stuff that can't be repaired. But then you go into, I mean, we keep mentioning Innovative Audio up in Vancouver because, well, he's a friend of mine and he's close by me and I've been there a million times. But, I'd say probably every speaker in that place can be repaired. And there's hundreds of speakers in there. And actually, a lot of them have them repaired because sometimes they get them and, they'll buy stuff in estate sales and sometimes it doesn't work and they repair them.
Yeah.
There's very little in terms of speakers that can't be repaired. There's very little in terms of, the older amplifiers and preamps, they can all be repaired and not by, and they don't have to be sent to the company, like, let's say, Tom Evans Audio.
Look at this, man.
What?
There's Mendit Mark in the BBC story. We were just talking about him.
Oh, yeah.
How about that? Synchronicity, man. This is cool.
There's a lot of secrets, a lot of overlap here. This is yeah. And then there's, of course, the whole vinyl thing. And the vinyl thing is really, as they were saying on the Your Morning Coffee podcast last week, a lot of people think vinyl is like this little add-on part of the music business, but it's a giant part of the music business. I mean, in some cases with some artists, it's a very significant chunk of their income. And, the sales are only still going up. And the nice thing about record players is any halfway decent one can be repaired.
Yeah.
And because, a lot of them haven't changed much.
I was reading the other day that what's holding vinyl sales down is simply production capacity. You open up more pressing places and vinyl sales are going to go up again. It's just they can't make enough vinyl to meet the demand right now. So that says something.
Yeah. And, no matter even 30 years from now, a lot of turntables that are already 30 or 40 years old could still be repaired. Because a lot of it is very kind of generic parts, belts and pulleys and things like that. And and usually it's the belts that go, and the cartridge, of course, can be replaced. And it's just not that big a deal. Tape decks are a little tougher, but still, a lot of that is pretty generic parts.
Yeah.
And stuff that repair people can figure out how to fix, even if they don't have a manual.
Yeah. I'm thinking about learning how to repair vintage stuff. I was talking to the proprietor of Classic Audio and Records up the road from me. He sells a lot of vintage stereo receivers, a lot of old Pioneer, a lot of old Marantz and things like that. Yeah. And if I can ever find the time, he's got a couple of old stereo receivers that are just like, it's not worth what it would cost to repair them for him. And he's just going to sell them to me for like scrap prices, basically, just for me to practice on repairing them and to develop that as a skill. Because he was like, we're down to one repair guy. We need more repair guys. If you can learn to repair this stuff, I can throw some easy money your way every once in a while, So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now he's backed up about a year on repairs. So might not be a bad skill to have. I was talking to a young kid the other day at the record store here in town who is one of the things he's doing. He's not going to college. He's going to trade school to learn to be a mechanic, but specifically to work on older cars. Because he said a lot of people his age simply do not trust any car with a touchscreen in it. They don't trust any car that has an accompanying app or something like that. So he was like, you don't understand, like people my age, we're about to start buying a lot of cars made before 2008. Wow. So he was like, I'm trying to get ahead of the curve and learn how to repair them because, there's going to be big demand. A lot of people buying older cars, they got to be fixed too. So I think it's a pretty smart move on his part. And I think that's driving a lot of this classic audio demand as well. I mean, I think the rise of it, not totally, this is not the total story. It can't be. And even like this BBC story is not the total story, but this is a piece of it for sure. These kids buying cassettes and CDs and vinyl, a lot of them are just rejecting the more odious aspects of modern connected audio,
Yeah.
One of them was mentioning to me, like, I don't even know what they're able to determine about me from spying on my listening choices. But she brought up the fact that there was that big deal a few years ago where Target figured out that somebody was pregnant before they did.
Yeah.
So Target started sending this teenage girl coupons for, maternity related stuff. And her dad pitched a fit and like, how dare you, my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out she was pregnant and even she didn't know, but Target figured it out from simply basically looking at her other purchasing choices, right?
Yeah.
She was buying certain vitamins and having certain cravings, and Target was like, that means you're pregnant. And she was like, wait, what? So these kids are like, what are they going to be able to figure out from what I listen to? I just don't know, but I don't want them knowing. So that's part of what's driving this too.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense. But hey, can I share with you a pro tip about repairing audio gear?
Please do,
because this will help your burgeoning career. I've actually fixed some audio gear, over the decades, and my technique is I take the thing apart and I look at the circuit board, and if there's something that has burn marks on it, I replace that. Sometimes
brilliant.
It works.
That's utterly brilliant. Oh man, I love it.
That's the extent of what I know about audio product repair.
Nice. Yeah.
I really see a future where we have repairable audio products, but then a non-repairable source, like a phone,
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Marginally repairable, because that'd be fine. Then the phones are going to change out for new technology every couple of years anyway, and then like I remember Brian Barr, who ran Cat MBX Audio. That was his whole attitude. They made speakers, and he said, "Look, buy good speakers and good amps, and plan on changing your surround processor out every 5 years." And buy whatever one you want. There's like lots of good ones, and invest the money in the speakers and the amps, and don't invest that much in the surround processor.
Yeah.
So,
bringing it back to this BBC article, I really like the way it ends because it talks about this woman who had a record player from her youth, and I love the discussion about the emotional connection to it. She said there were tears; it was really emotional. Some of my cousins visited and it said, "Oh my God, we remember coming to your house and seeing that record player." And I just think, can I imagine? Like having the same emotional attachment to any of the gear that I've got right now, except for my speakers and my turntable. Maybe my NAD integrated amp. I don't know. Probably not. I don't think I'd cry over that. But just the emotional connection to this stuff, that was really resonant for me. And I think we've lost something, when we lost that. But it really made me smile reading that she had such an emotional attachment to this very record player. And that says something that I think our industry could learn from.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked, I want to, when I retire, I really would like to buy audio gear that I have an emotional attachment to. And basically that means some speakers I think are cool, an amp I think is cool, and a Bluetooth audio receiver.
Hey, I've got a guide to those on Wirecutter. Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, anything else to say about this one?
No, but we're going to go talk more about amplifiers and what John Darko has to say about them.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Okay.
And welcome back to Audio
Unleashed.
Nice. That sounded really good, man. I like this gravelly. You got this Phoebe Buffet thing going on. So.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is.
the ditzy blonde on Friends. Wait, and she sang.
She?
Yeah, but yeah. Oh, hang on. Let me explain.
Thing going on?
Well, no, hang on. Let me explain. She was the one that sang "Smelly Cat," but at one point she got a cold, and so she's standing up in the coffee shop singing, and she's like, "Smelly cat, smelly cat," and everybody's like, "Ooh, sexy voice." Yeah, Lisa Kudrow.
So I have a Lisa Kudrow thing going on?
Well, she thought her voice sounded really sexy when she had the gravelly voice, like the whole. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Keep trying to dig yourself out of this one, pal.
I'm just gonna stop and start talking about Darko. How about that?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you send me this video. Why'd you send me this?
Because I saw it. I'm kind of like, we generally like Darko's stuff because we think he's got a pretty reasonable attitude towards audio. And,
absolutely.
But this was about amplifier matching with the KEF-Q Concerto Meta. And I'm kind of like, oh boy, is he going to get into this, this speaker, this amplifier is the perfect match for this speaker. I'm like, oh God, is he going to get into this? And so I watched it. I was kind of like, oh, this is actually cool because it raised a lot of questions. It raised just a ton of questions. And it didn't, I wouldn't say it answered any questions because it just raised so many questions. But these are the questions that we at Audio Unleashed this is our job to answer these questions. So other people raise them, we answer them.
There you go.
So I just have to say, let me start off by saying Darko reviewed this speaker. And then he got a call from another reviewer saying he disagreed with John's review. I just have to say, this just speaks to what an incredibly nice and accommodating guy John Darko is. Because if some other reviewer called me to say he disagreed with my review, I would block this number in about 2 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But hey, you got more content out of it. You got more content.
I know, but oh my God. Oh, I mean, how many people have emailed you? Oh, I disagree with your reviews. Hey, look, if they disagree, if it's like, I don't know, let's say it's a Bluetooth speaker and, it turns out to be, like the battery life declines really fast or something like that, right? Maybe I missed it. Hey, great. But it's like, well, I think this sounds better. It's like, I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
Get in the comment section. Tell people you think this sounds better. That's fine. Yeah. You can have your say. I don't want to discuss it with you.
Yeah.
Because how can it possibly end with that? Without the only way you can be satisfied is if I say, you know what, you're right. So anyway, so kudos to Darko.
The criticism was that this friend of his thought that the Q Concerto Meta had more muscular bass than Darko thought it did, and so he was like, I'll try it with some different amps. And he was like, oh, yeah, with this amp, the bass is more muscular. With this amp, it's like this. With this amp, it's like this. And that just goes to show that you never really know what a speaker sounds like. Because it's like having 2 watches that read a different time. How do you know what the time really is? And it's like, there was a good opportunity here. And I feel like John missed it, right? And that opportunity was to explain why one loudspeaker amp combination might sound different than that loudspeaker with a different amp. I mean, he talks about impedance once, and it's simply to list the nominal impedance of the Q Concerto Meta. He doesn't talk about the impedance plot. He doesn't talk about where the impedance is lower, which is, and where the phase is steeper, and therefore where the speaker, at what frequency range it is a more difficult load for an amplifier. He doesn't talk about the characteristics of these different amps that might cause it to play differently with a more difficult to drive speaker. And I wish he had, because he had an opportunity to really inform and educate people here. And I feel like I can't read John's mind, and I don't know John. I don't have the luxury of being able to call him up. But the perception that it leaves me with is it's a little too close to those guys who are like, well, it's my job to connect all these speakers to all these amps, and I'll tell you which combination works. Come to me. You got to come back to me. And that's not what Darko's saying, but it kind of stinks of that. Instead of explaining how this stuff works, and I don't know, just like explaining Ohm's law, right? I mean, that would just unlock so much understanding for so many people to understand why perhaps one of these amps might have been a better match for the speakers than the other.
Well, here's the thing. He talks about all the differences in sound. And, the problem you get into there is if someone's talking about differences in amplifier sound, they need to say what their testing conditions were, right? Because anybody can put on 2 amps and, swap them out manually, probably not match the levels. And this is what the vast majority of reviewers do.
Yeah.
And say, oh, I like this one better. It has more muscular bass, even though if it's a half a decibel louder, that could be, more muscular bass. Now, most reviewers don't do that. And I really wish they would. And I wish they'd invest a little bit in the gear that it takes to do that. And, because once you get everything set up right, your testing is so much easier because it's blind. You don't have to worry, like, am I biased towards this brand or this product? Because you don't know. And then you can say, hey, I tested it blind. And then people like Audio
Unleashed
will, go like, oh, well, he tested it blind. There's something to it. Now it's like, we got to go, well, how did he test it? I don't know. But let's just, if someone says they heard these differences, I don't get on people's reviews and go, no, you didn't.
Yeah. I don't know what John heard. Could be that I was sitting in the room with him and hear exactly the same. I'm not refuting that at all. Yeah.
Right. But he does talk about like amplifier power ratings. And that's something I thought was worth talking about because he talks about how the KEF has a recommended power rating of, I can't remember what it was, but let's say it was something like 30 to 150 watts or something, right? And this is into 4 ohms. And then one of the amplifiers he tried had a power rating of like 320 watts into 4 ohms. And he talks about that being overkill. But it's not really.
Right.
Because, first of all, the maximum power rating on a speaker is not, under what conditions, right? And how did the manufacturer test that? There are standards for testing that, but the conditions are rarely given. And, any speaker will take some pretty huge momentary peaks, right? Because a lot of times the part of the speaker that fails is the voice coil. The voice coil burns out. And, if it's like a quick hit of 500 watts or something, probably the voice coil and the woofer, whatever, can take that, right? And now if it's a few seconds of that with a sine wave, it probably can't, and it will probably blow, right? Believe me, I've done it. And so I don't like to look at, maximum power ratings of amps and say, oh, well, that's too much amp for this speaker. Unless it's like a little teeny tiny speaker and you're running a full range signal into it. But even so, let's say you have LS35As or something, with a little tiny, 4.5 inch woofer or whatever. And you run it on a 500 watt amp. If you run it on a 10 watt amp, and you start to push it to its limits, the 10 watt amp is going to distort, right? Yeah. And the more distortion you have, the more it starts to look like a square wave, right? Because you have more harmonics coming in there, and the more chance you stand of burning out your tweeter.
Yeah.
I've done that too, and so and also. The difference between, if you have an amp that has a max of 300 watts a channel versus 150, that's only a 3 decibel difference, right? Right. And people talk about, even he talks a little bit in there about the amps that have, one amp is 150 watts, I think, and one amp is 160. And that is like a totally insignificant difference. Right. I don't know what it is in decibels, but it's a fraction of a decibel, I mean, I can calculate it, but that would take me a while. Yeah. And I would need a pen and a paper, which I don't have. And but it's much less than a decibel. So
yeah.
People, I get frustrated when I get this a lot from consumers who, and people just who ask my advice about audio gear, is they'll talk about, oh, well, this amp has this power rating and this speaker has this power rating, and you want to be sure to match. I'm like, no, you don't.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a big misunderstanding about that.
Right.
And, I usually tell people, I'll specify what amp they need based on, the sensitivity of the speaker. But in every case with me, if I'm recommending a speaker, it's going to have normal sensitivity, right? In which case, 87 decibels at 1 meter or something. Yeah. In which case, any amp that's got at least probably 50 watts will drive that as loud as you want it to go.
Yeah.
And, assuming, if it's a 4-ohm speaker and you have a really crappy amp that doesn't have a rated 4-ohm power, maybe not. But, I think that usually these kind of things are really not that important. Once you have 50 watts in a normal speaker, you're good to go.
But, it does depend on the speaker, and the Q Concerto Meta is, hang on, I should have looked at who measured, somebody has to have measured this. Oh, sure. Our buddy Aaron Hardison measured it.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the impedance plot now of this speaker. Holy moly. Like, once you sort of combine the impedance dips and the electrical phase, man, like between 80 and 100 hertz, this thing is effectively, it's dipping below like an effective 2-ohm load. I mean, that is a gnarly load. And like, Darko never talks about, I wouldn't, of the amps that he is referencing in this, I wouldn't think the power supply would be an issue on any of them. I'm looking at all of them and assuming probably got really competent power supplies. But what about the output impedance of those amps? When you've got a speaker that's got such crazy impedance swings as this speaker, suddenly the output impedance of your amp becomes a problem. So, again, man, I should have Googled this before. I'm sorry. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants today. But he talks about the Hagel H590. Let's see if anybody measured that.
That's Class AB.
Oh, Soundstage measured it.
It was probably a 0.1 ohm output impedance.
Holy snot. The output impedance is 0.013 ohms.
Oh, it's really low. Yeah. Okay, fine.
I can give that Hagel like way higher damping factor than it actually needs. So, I mean, it is basically going to look at the woofer and go, you're my bitch, right? Yeah. So I'm struggling to think of a speaker that the Hagel wouldn't be able to drive. So, I mean, there's some that backs up Darko's observation, right? That backs up Darko's observation that the Hagel might have given the speaker more muscular bass because this is a difficult load, and this is an amplifier that is fully capable of driving any load you throw at it. So there you go. I just wish he had explained that a little better, Yeah.
But however, he does talk about the musical fidelity amp, which is 25 watts into 8 ohms, and I think it was 35, 36 into 4 ohms. And in that kind of situation where you're trying to hit a speaker with a 2 ohm impedance at 80 hertz, you're going to run into problems. That's just, you can do the math, and 36 watts is just not, and I don't know what the sensitivity of the speaker is. Most casts are pretty normal. So let's just say it's at 87, right? So 36 watts is only going to get you just over 100, I think. So, I can do the math, but I'm too lazy. It'll get you a little over 100. It'll get you up to like 102, 100 and something like that. And that's loud, but for a peak in the bass, that's not that loud, especially if you've got that kind of impedance dip. That amp is really going to be struggling.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's completely, when you've got a speaker that has, I think, a questionable engineering choice here, and you're mating it with a low-powered amp, or an amp, if it was an amp like a tube amp or something that had, relatively high output impedance or whatever. And, those kind of things would cause a problem. And in that case, the amp matching is important. However, I just want to say any good, normal, solid state amp with, 100 watts of power into 100 into 8 ohms, at least say 150 into 4 or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Even probably 100 into 4 is going to do a perfectly fine job with the speaker. And I get mad because there's always been this thing with that, like you had to, matching amps with speakers was this mystical, magical thing, right? Like matching a Jedi with the right, lightsaber or whatever. And it's really not. It's a lot. So many people in this industry try to inject mystique into it, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the ways they do it. And this is why this video I was a little red flagged. Although once I watched it, I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. But I was red flagged by the title. And, there was an ad that used to run for Sound by Singer. And it had, an very famous audio dealer that used to exist in New York City. And the ad was, all of our systems come with this one indispensable component. And it was a picture of Andy Singer. And then the pitch was like, well, he's this very experienced dealer and he knows what amps match with what speakers and what, he knows how to make a synergistic system, right? There's never been any evidence of any of that any of these guys can somehow put together a better system than somebody else can. And in so many cases, I'd say probably most cases, with these dealers, the amp they sell, the amp line they happen to sell, just happens to match perfectly with the speaker line they happen to sell. What a coincidence. It's not like they get in the new Focal speaker and they're like, well, what amp is going to go great with this? And they sit down and audition all these amplifiers and figure out, of the 6 different amplifiers we tried it with, this one where it really was magical. Because they don't sell 6 different lines of amplifiers, number one. They sell 2 or 3, probably. And maybe they might sell 6, but some of those 6 are going to be low-end amplifiers that you probably wouldn't hook up to a big Focal Utopia tower speaker, right? And they claim there's this analytical process they're going through, but in my view, I haven't seen any evidence that they actually go through any kind of analytical process, but they keep this idea of like, oh, it's absolutely critical to match the amp to the speaker out there because it gives them value. And, if they want to have value, well, gee whiz, it's a place you can go hear audio products.
There you go.
There's plenty of value in that. Especially since they're pretty scarce these days.
I mean, any consumer armed with the understanding of Ohm's law could see through that. And that's we as audio reviewers should be teaching Ohm's law more. We would have to write a lot less if more people understood it.
I've tried, dude. I have tried for decades. I have tried. There's a lot of people working against us on this.
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Anyway, buddy, you want to wrap it up and do some credits?
This is a Butterburger production.
Absolutely. And I'm editing this one. It's my turn. Yay.
Okay.
Got some new music from you. I have to admit, I'm ashamed to admit this, buddy. I haven't listened to your new song yet, man. I got the email and I downloaded it and put it on our music folder and I haven't heard it. So I am failing as a friend and co-host.
I knew you hadn't heard it. Because if you had heard it, you'd be a different person.
Well, there you go. You're hearing it straight from Brent. By next episode, I'll be a different person, and you will too, dear listener.
Everybody listening to this will be as well.
Yeah. So this one is going to come out the week of Christmas. So to people who celebrate, we should say Merry Christmas, and if you celebrate something else, happy that thing. And if you don't celebrate anything, then thanks for listening.
Happy New Year.
There you go. Yeah.
Happy New Year. This will be the first one before the new year, right? Yeah.
It will be the last one before the new year. Yeah.
And thank you all of our listeners for sticking with us and
Yeah.
Making this a pretty good 2024 for the Audio
Unleashed
podcast.
Yeah, man. All right, buddy. Well,
all right.
Yeah, let's wrap this thing up. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you. But everybody else, thanks so much. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.